Also remember how to use a microphone. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Round Lake School District 116 for the interfund transfer public hearing in the John T. McGee Middle School cafeteria on Monday, June the 21st at 6:57 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Francisco?
Here.
Miss Lee?
Here.
Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mrs. Klingler?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mr. DeVera?
Here.
All right, and we have a roll call, so let us get started with the public hearing for the interfund transfer. And Dr. Kibbens, take it away.
Good evening, thank you. According to Board of Education Policy 4:20 fund balances, it states the superintendent or designee shall maintain fund balances adequate to ensure the district's ability to maintain levels of service and pay its obligations. Upon review of our future fund balances and the uncertainty of when we may receive all of our June taxes, it's in the best interest that we appropriate the following funds from and to the following locations. $4 million permanently transferred from Fund 10, the Education Fund, to Fund 20, Operations. $3,310 permanently transferred from Fund 10, Education, to Fund 30, Debt Service. That is to cover the property tax relief grant that was sent to Fund 10 in response to the grant recipient that we were as Round Lake School District. $700,000 abated from Fund 70 working cash to Fund 50 Social Security IMRF, and $500,000 abated from Fund 70 working cash to Fund 80 tort and liability. In order for us to complete this transfer, we must have first set a hearing date, which we did do in May, and approved that for this evening at 6:55 p.m. We also must have posted in a local newspaper of circulation 7 days, but not more than 30 days prior to the hearing, and we did do so. That publication did run on June 4th for anyone that may be interested in attending this hearing, and we also must make sure that we approve a resolution in order to make these transfers so that when our auditors review our books that it has been approved by the Board of Education.
Any questions for Dr. Kibbens in regards to the transfers? Seeing no questions, so we will move on. Thank you, Dr. Kibbens. Move on to public comment. As always, members of the public are invited, in fact, asked to speak up and participate in public comment during all regular board meetings by attending in person or by submitting an electronic public comment form. Please note the speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and a link to electronic public comments are in the meeting notices. Do we have any electronic public comments for the special meeting this afternoon?
Sorry, just 1 second.
Thank you.
We do not.
And do we have any public comment here in the local session that would like to step up and speak? Seeing no one stepping up to speak, then we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting of the Interfund Transfer Public Hearing at 7:01 p.m. Thank you. All right, and now I would like to call the meeting to order of the regular meeting of the Round Lake Area 116 School District in the cafeteria of John T. McGee Middle School on Monday, June 21st at 7:01 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. DeVera?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mrs. Klingler?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
Miss Lee?
Here.
Mr. Francisco?
Here. And we have a roll call. All right, and board members, please remember to keep your phones off the table and on silent. And as always, here in the school, masks are still required, so thank you for participating along with that as well. So let's move on to our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
right, we do have a meeting agenda in front of us. Any questions in regards to that? If not, we will ask for a motion and an approval of the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Larson and second by Ms. Klingler. Any additional questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes, we have an approved agenda. So first up will be communications to the board. And first on that list is the strategic planning update and next steps. Dr. Mendoza.
So I do thank you, President Francisco, and the full board. I just have a couple of opening comments regarding the presentation this evening. First, I want to thank the board for providing a little bit of extended time tonight. I do want to reassure the board we are not going to be reading the text on every single slide. For your convenience, we've provided multiple documents for your review. We had the executive summary memo, we had the PowerPoint deck, and then we also had greatness indicators in detail. The structure of the presentation essentially is broken up into 5 sections. Those would be the highlights from this past year. Many of the highlights you've heard about or seen because those are primarily the items that you've seen on the dashboard. I will be speaking to some of the greatness indicators as well as members of the team. That's, this next section of the slide. We have one slide that I will be covering to talk about alignment of effort and outcomes. We will spend a little bit of time identifying and speaking with you and sharing information regarding short-term targets for next year as part of the plan. And then frankly, I will be covering some what I call large-scale buckets that need our attention over the next 3 years. I do want to thank the team. This presentation is really a culmination of about 6 weeks of discussion and work. We are so focused on the work during the school year that, frankly, one of the things that we struggle with sometimes is organizing it and figuring out a way to communicate it in an effective, cogent manner. So I do want to thank the team for the work that they put into this. And I also want to acknowledge and call out the fact that when you see the outcomes associated with this work, what I'm most proud of is this was done in the middle of a pandemic. So we've basically had 2 lanes that we were driving in, moving back and forth, a pandemic bucket where we had to attend to the operational and safety needs of our children and families and staff, while also, to the best of our ability, trying to continue to move the district forward. Very optimistic that next year will be better, just all around. And the last thing I want to say before I turn it over to the teaching and learning team who will be starting is that we use the strategic plan. We work the plan. It is not a document that we construct it, it goes on the shelf, we go about our business. I mean, it's literally something that we talk about daily, weekly, and it's a culmination tonight of the process that you supported, in the I know it seems like a long time ago, but the 1920 school year, and frankly, in March, that's when everything shut down. So we're very eager and excited to share some information with you. Again, we will not be reading off the slides because you have all of the detail in the packet, and there'll be an opportunity for you to certainly have discussion as a board and ask any questions. So without further ado, teaching and learning will start the presentation.
So what we did is we have several of our of the slides have a lot of stuff on them. So what we did is we went through and we kind of picked out some things we wanted to highlight. And so my team is lined up, hopefully in proper order, and we'll be coming up here and just kind of giving you little pieces that go through the different themes. And I think they're all prepared, but the people who are doing the future stuff will have to wait a minute. So we'll start with the highlights from our current year.
anyway, there are a lot of things on that slide, but we're going to highlight the transitions. What we want to give you a little background in is that we brought a team together to discuss transitions between all the grade centers, and we wanted to talk about what was important, especially in remote, to help these students feel comfortable moving forward to the next grade level. And we really did do this at every single grade level, and we also worked on systems for transition that we can use moving forward with or without the remote environment. So that's kind of a little introduction. Kurt will tell you a little bit about how that came about and what we still have in place that people can refer to all through the summer.
So we were able to leverage some virtual tools in order to make these transitions as smooth as possible for the students. I think probably the prime example is the 5th to 6th grade transition. We recorded a number of videos with the middle school admin speaking to the students. Those videos were then posted to all the school websites, and then the principals did a large-scale Zoom with the students and with the parents to help them feel more comfortable. We also did some similar things with the counseling department from the high school down to the middle school. And then we're hoping with, depending on mitigations, to be able to do some in-person things as we start off the school year to help those students feel more comfortable. But these were processes that we believe will roll forward and improve in years to come. Any questions?
Kurt, we're not gonna take questions after each slide, maybe after certain sections of the presentation or at the end.
Good evening. I have theme B, which is meeting the unique needs of learners. And we targeted the needs of our underperforming subgroups by providing a year-long intensive professional development and, more importantly, coaching in co-teaching practices and specially designed instruction. That was with Ann Benninghoff, who is a national speaker. And then also the language instructional practices with the Illinois Resource Center. And what's really exciting about this is we were able to give the professional development to not just the special ed teachers, the language learner teachers, but also the gen ed teachers and related services.
Hello, oh, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I have theme C, social emotional development. And as the slide entails, we made many strides this past year and a half with SEL during a year when it was crucial to ensuring that students felt comfortable and safe during the classes and as they entered the building. And with that, we made strides in tech. We made strides in the fact that we created the standards and indicators through K-5. We ensured that there was parent support and they were aware of everything that was going on through the artifacts that are listed on the slide. And finally, the fact that we do have plans to expand upon what we've done in SEL this following school year. An example, a great example and good news that we have in SEL is in the high school in the music education department, where they were part of a research study during the 2019 and 2020 school year, partnering with Lake Forest College. And during that time, they basically built in daily strategies and that really pushed their classes to the next level. And the findings they had and the data they collected has actually been published in an upcoming book that's going to be soon released. And the title of that is Portraits of Music Education and Social Emotional Learning. And from that as well, Mike West and Bobby Olson, who are the directors of the choir and band departments in the high school, they've been asked to be part of an advisory committee as part of the new Center for Arts Education and SEL group. So a lot of good stuff happening in SEL in the district.
Hello, in regards to our equity work, the first 2 points on this slide are things I've definitely talked in great length with all of you about, but the final bullet there I think is really important to note. We were able, in partnership with myself, Melanie Lanny, our coordinator, and also Sarah Fontana that oversees our district librarian, to really move forward our school libraries. and we were able to find over $100,000 worth of funds to buy books to just provide more of an equity lens to our students. And the really cool thing is you'll now find by the start of the year books in all of our libraries of the 25 or more different languages that are spoken in our district. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity to update our school libraries.
So for instructional technology, I think it's safe to say that of all the departments I have, this department was instrumental in getting us through last year. We had a lot of people who were starting on technology for the first time. We had teachers who hadn't ever used Canvas before. We had to, roll out how to record yourself, how to do all kinds of different things, post things to Canvas, make recordings. And so our instructional technology department just worked constantly all the time. They were super amazing. And like I said, we wouldn't have survived without them. So some of the things on there, like the second bullet point that says remote and hybrid learning models successfully implemented, is about I don't know how many words that is, but it's like the biggest understatement ever on a bullet point, because they just worked constantly, tirelessly to make sure that our students and our teachers were ready to go for that remote environment.
Okay, we're popping around a little bit. So we're going back to theme D, community engagement. We met tonight in Community Engagement Committee and discussed some of these, but just a quick overview. I think a lot of our work this year focused on response to needs of parents and students. We're able to accomplish that through a variety of ways. Focus groups with families, the Round Lake Action Congress with our students, also engaging with our external kind of community non-parent groups with our work with equity, the vision statement, and then developing resources based off what we received from all of those stakeholder groups. And then just communication was key this year, more so than any other year before us, because of the remote aspect of education this year.
So from the business office area, we were celebrating the fact that we had an opportunity to partner with NRG, and we reduced our appearance on the grid by reducing our energy, and as a fact, we received a rebate back from that company as well as ComEd.
As Don mentioned, there is a great deal that we've accomplished during the COVID, and I would say our operations department did a wonderful job making sure that the facilities were updated and prepared for students to return, as well as our human resources department worked diligently on their social media platform in order to secure as many candidates as we can for the future job openings.
In the information technology area, I would like to highlight two items in direct response to the pandemic. You truly get a sense of people's character when they are faced with the unknown, a worldwide pandemic the likes of which none of us had ever seen. And early on, the risks to one's health were unclear. At the very start of the high school year, our team members rolled up their sleeves and found innovative ways to serve. First, the very first bullet point, by designing and building our homegrown staff and student COVID screener systems to ensure the safety of everyone when it was deemed safe to enter buildings again. And then second, when it was clear staff and students would not be coming back in person, our team knew they had to still meet the needs of our staff and students for broken devices. So our doors technically never closed, as we handled over 560 in-person appointments for help. While the risks were still unclear and the district was running limited in-person schedules, I didn't have staff coming to me asking me for more time off. I had the exact opposite situation. I had a technician, actually one that's here tonight, come to me and ask me if he can come into the office on his remote days to help serve our staff and students and get ahead of his other work. It is that sense of duty to others and selfishness that stands out over the past year, and this is just one of many examples of that. Thank you.
Board, I know it seems a little different that I'm up here. I just didn't want to have to toggle back and forth while I was trying to speak and present, excuse me. So you may, those of you that were on the board when we developed the strategic plan may or may not remember these, but these are I think we had 45 people, 40 people. These were the greatness indicators and how they're defined that the strategic planning committee identified. Superior performance, distinctive impact, and lasting endurance. Those are the very high level. And then if you remember, the committee engaged in deep discussion about what does that look like? How do we measure success? I think in stating the obvious, the student achievement one is, that one is frankly the easiest to identify in terms of should it be in the category. But then we also identified additional measures of performance in these areas, and you see those listed on this slide. For your convenience, we do have detail in each of these categories as part of the board packet as backup information. So as I've indicated, we've got some information in all three of these areas specific to student achievement. There's information in the backup document regarding community partnerships leaning towards student opportunities, program offerings in terms of growth, and then external recognition of students, staff, and schools. We've identified multiple student and staff recognitions, multiple presentations that members of the team have been asked to participate in, and then feedback in the form of high levels of satisfaction. So again, without actually reading through all of those, you have those in there as backup information. We're certainly happy to answer any questions you have when we're done with this section of the presentation. And then I put a series of slides in here, and I'm not going to, again, get into detail on every one, but the first several specifically are more demographic in nature. So it's designed to show you, the board, the reader, the audience, who we are as a school district. Very, very proud. I know it may not seem like it, but we believe in least restrictive environment. We believe in inclusion. So we do not, the goal should be to be fairly in line with the state average with the percentage of our kids that have IEPs. We are not going to behave intentionally to reduce the percentage of kids with IEPs, but if we can provide student with support through Tier 1 or through an MTSS process, that's what we want to do first. We also have, our community is changing, information for you connected to our low income percentage as it relates to the state average. You also see the percent of English learners, again, more reflective of a changing community, but certainly something that we embrace. And I think over the last 3 to 4 years, you've heard us talking about providing additional support to our English learner population, which definitely is prudent and proper. Mobility percentage, interestingly, with a district like ours, with our demographic, this is unusual. It appears that the community, when they come here, they stay. We don't have a lot of, transient families moving out of the community. We do see a fair amount of transition between schools in the district, but that's the benefit of having a common curriculum and a common philosophy in all of our schools. We believe in one instructional philosophy, one instructional program across all of our schools. Certainly every school has their own unique strengths, gifts, and abilities and their own culture and climate. We want to embrace that. But what kids are supposed to know and be expected to do should not change based on where they go to school and which teacher they have. So that's something we're very, very proud of. You've seen this before, credit to the high school for keeping it going. I believe Mr. Barry's here, but, I think I shared this with the board. I think in 2012-13, 13-14, our graduation rate was down at about 72%. And definitely our kids have gotten better and our kids have gotten stronger and we're providing more programming. But this is really a function of adult behavior necessarily and maybe not kids always. I don't know if we were monitoring to the extent we should be. So I think it's a combination through the teachers, the mastery learning philosophy. The board has supported more counselors. We're monitoring better. And so we have more supports in place to help get our students cross the finish line. This one is not unique to us. you have to remember everything shut down in the spring of 1920. And I know there were some kids who were thinking, and even my own people in my neighborhood, should we actually go to school in the fall if we're not going to have in-person instruction? Now, what I would also say, though, is we're not necessarily interested in pushing every student to a post-secondary four-year institution. We want a good fit for our students. And so we are interested in, yes, opening as many doors as possible, which could even be in the vocational setting. So just something to highlight. Post-secondary enrollment within 12 months, steady increase. Obviously, we'd like to see that number higher. Advanced placement credits. This one's really important because I don't want you to think, I don't mean to get technical or education speak. I don't want to get too much into detail, but we are probably, in my opinion, capped at where we're in the sweet spot of where our advanced placement enrollment is. And the reason is, if we keep offering more, those start to cannibalize other classes. Kids only have so many places to go and so many places to be. And so, for example, if we were to offer, AP computer science, maybe that's a bad example, but they may say, well, I'm going to take that instead of AP physics, or I'm not going to take the regular physics class. So that 500, 475, 460 range is where we want to be. And if you think about what you've done as a board, you've actually expanded non-advanced placement course offerings in the areas of digital and fine arts. You've expanded the engineering classes. We've offered different types of English and math courses and electives and those types of things. So this is good information to have. I just don't want you to think you should see an upward trend in perpetuity with this one. This is good. I don't know how much to say it. Chronic absenteeism is considered 10% of the school year. That's 17 days. I think, frankly, that's a little bit of a low bar, but that's just what the number is. Chronically truant students. And then, we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but in my opinion, this is a direct result of our teachers. We, on the most recent data we had, we exceeded the county average with students hitting the college readiness benchmark for the students that go to the College of Lake County. I think over half of our seniors that are going to college are going to the College of Lake County, and we think that's a good option for them. But this is a result of very intentional work by Sarah Fontana, the English teachers, the leadership team at the high school, making sure that our kids are prepared and getting college ready learning environments. So here you see the ELA percentage, and here you see the math percentage. So distinctive impact, again, I'm not going to read these to you, but you've got connections, innovation and leadership in the field. We definitely have that in the district. I think homeschool connections is something I think that we need to continue to focus on, but we have specific examples of all of these. Just to call out a couple, positive engagement with some of the response plans we've had, the community partnership specifics are listed on the backup document. We have a lot of people in this district that are asked to speak and present, and they're recognized for their accomplishments, which is, fantastic. Can't compliment Dr. Steffen, Dr. Center, and the team in teaching and learning for the, as well as HR for the equity work and the recruitment efforts. I think Ms. Balciota spoke to some of the recruitment efforts at one of the recent human resource updates, so just credit to them. Last one, lasting endurance, no pun intended. Student preparation and transitions to the next level. We know that there are several key transitions in a student's school experience: 8 to 9, 5 to 6, 2nd to 3rd, starting school. And then certainly we want to do all of this and be fiscally responsible. We know that if we don't have our financial house in order, that we can't do any of these really good things for kids or staff. So the last thing, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to you for questions, comments. The team is here before we get into kind of where we're headed. We absolutely believe in redundancy. And what I mean by that is whenever we're focused on work, our work on a daily basis, we don't want, if we're focusing on too much, we're not focused at all, right? So this slide, we actually reviewed with our administrative team. And by the way, we had a tremendous administrative gathering within the last 10 days. It was the first one we've had in person in 15 months. It was just so good to be with everybody. But we do want redundancy between what's going on at the district, what's happening in the schools with the school improvement plans, and frankly, how we're evaluating administrators. So we show what our priorities are, and I think you as a board definitely do. What are you spending your resources on, and how are we spending our time? My analogy, and it's not true in every case because every situation is different, and it's a sports analogy, just because, I kind of talked about this with my son. If he tells me he wants to be a good shooter, but he's never practicing or spending time shooting, well, he doesn't really, his words aren't aligning with his actions. I think that's true of a school system. If we say teaching and learning is really important and we're not spending any of our time there and we're not putting any resources there, then our actions aren't really aligned with kind of what we're doing. So this is something that I believe in, and when we're talking to administrators in terms of the evaluation process, it's the same. So your effort as an administrator needs to be focused on moving the school forward, moving the district forward, etc. So I'm actually going to come back around, and then I'll be coming back up again later. But before we get into next year, I'm going to turn it over to the board for a little bit of a pause. All the people who are on the team are here and available to answer questions at this time.
All right. Any questions for the team at this moment, since Dr. Mendez's allowing us to ask questions now?
Okay, I have a couple questions. One of the first ones I wanted to ask, and I'm sorry I'm gonna be jumping all over, so bear with me. When they did our occupancy, I wanted to ask if they included the possibility of like a COVID baby boom in that scenario.
Are you talking about the enrollment study?
I think.
Yeah, so I would say the answer to that is no. They basically, the methodology they used, it was historical trend data. So what I would say, and we'll actually get to this a little bit further in the presentation, but I can just say it now. With some of these things, we have to go slow to go fast. So I think if you look at some of the things we'll be talking about later on, it's a 2 to 3 year window. The benefit of that, it will actually allow us to see if the enrollment projections are truing out the way they say. And you got to remember there's multiple projections, 3 different paces. So we might be aligning with a faster growing one or a slower going one. And so we will adjust based on whatever that is.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask about was, so this year coming up, I know, well, before I say it, I want to just compliment you guys on the level of intricacy that went into this. It was very detailed and it was very easy to read, and it was a lot. I know a lot of work went into that, so I appreciate it. I wanted to ask about social emotional learning in relation to, I know that this year coming up, they're going to have a more rigorous learning process because they're behind and there's catch up that's going to be doing. So I wanted to just ask a little bit more details about that.
So do you want me to do that now, even though it's not on the slide? Because I'm gonna talk about it on the slide for like the next steps of what we're gonna do, and a hold off, or do you want me to go right now?
Whenever you feel comfortable. I just wanted to make sure I asked because it was something that's been on my mind.
So Ms. Klingler, so the team is going to actually cover the SEL piece when but if we don't answer your question, we'll cover it. Okay.
Kind of in relation to that, I was actually, and I know this is actually a little bit on theme F, but emotional support for education. It's for the teachers, and I know that they did touch on that a little bit when I read it, but I wanted to just ask about that as well, just because I know. I'm sorry. When you come to it.
That's also part of the plan, so yeah.
Okay. And then just discussing possible, like, because I was looking at our
our students, you know, the income is going to be a continuing issue. It seems to be progressing, getting a little bit worse every year. Do they have any programs into place for like showing the children how to apply for grants for college and so forth, or vocational things like that? Okay.
Yeah,
Just
so,
wanna make sure I got
it's,
it all.
that's a big part of having a good, counselor to student ratio is being able to make sure that students are getting a sufficient amount of time, face time with counselors to be able to do that. And, our college and career counselor does a lot of that work. And then our individual counselors also support kids in looking for additional financial assistance.
That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? We will move on to the next wave.
Yep, so now we're gonna get into, so micro versus macro, really gonna focus on in the themes, the work on which we will be focused next year. And we'll go ahead and start with teaching and learning, I believe, Liz, and I'm sure you guys have the order figured out for that, so.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about Theme A, Teaching and Learning, but specifically focusing on some of the professional learning next steps. So moving forward, all of our professional learning is going to be built around 3 goals or pillars. The first one is to continue to innovate in the realm of personalization and choice for all of our staff. So we've always offered a lot of choice in terms of what staff can choose to learn, but now we're exploring the world of how. So what method for you as a professional works best? Did you like the success teams last year, that small group structure? Do you prefer workshops, a little more traditional, a little more didactic? Is coaching for you? So starting next year, our staff are going to pick one of those 4 paths and go stick with that path for the entire semester. And within that, there's still a lot of room to learn the what that they want. Our second goal is going to really increase our focus on the quality of our PD. And again, we've always been really conscientious about this, but now for the first time, we're starting to make quality indicator checklists, almost like a rubric, if you will. And our PD specialist and our whole team is going to work with facilitators on looking at what they're providing, comparing it with that rubric, and really trying to make sure that our quality is consistent across the board. And when people think Round Lake PD, they think it's always awesome. It's always wonderful. And then thirdly, we want to support all of our facilitators as much as possible. Monthly meetings, all workshop facilitators coming together and having, hey, this is the technique of the month, or all coaches coming together. These are the techniques that we're focusing on, and just supporting them as much as possible. Thank you.
Good evening. In meeting the unique needs of learners, we're going to focus next year on continuing to provide professional development that is high quality and delivered over a sustained period of time throughout the school year, through working with a continued partnership with Ann Benninghoff on inclusive practices, and expanding our partnership with the Illinois Resource Center to include elementary language teachers with a focus on early Spanish literacy, and district-wide administrators, as well as expanding to more general education teachers at the secondary level. Thank you.
Good evening. So in terms of SEL, there's 2 parts to it. So one is, what are we doing for the students? The majority of our students have not been in school for a year, almost a year and a half. So we really want to make sure that they have the extra supports to help them with their academic needs, but also their social emotional needs. So because you guys approved the behavior interventionists, those are going to be extra adults that are assigned to every building, and they're going to be able to be in the classrooms working with the students, helping teachers with those tier 1 strategies, just so that they can have that extra help in terms of building the relationships and being social with people and still doing social distancing, but establishing and building those routines. Because they haven't been in school, we have to retrain them on what school is like and what those behaviors are. And then the last one is the regulating of their emotions. And so we're going to continue with our community circle questions. We're going to continue with Calm Classroom. In terms of the adults, because you guys hopefully will approve that there is an adult staff wellness and self-care stipend that we are proposing.
This will allow for there to be one person at each building who's going to focus on wellness and making sure that the staff has social events, but that they can really focus on that. In terms of the mental health aspect, that is not what this position is for. We do have a company through HR that can provide mental health free counseling for the staff. So I wanted to make sure that that's clear, that this person is there to help reintroduce the staff to each other, and make sure that they're taking care of themselves during this tough times. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, my first time up here. Good evening. I have theme E, equity, and our focus for the 21-22 school year will be more differentiation at the tier 1 level within our MTSS frameworks. Secondly, specially designed instruction will continue within the special education department for students ages 3 through 22. And lastly, sheltered language instruction within the language learner classrooms at the secondary level. Thank you.
So big focus for instructional technology next year will be to make sure that we continue the things that were effective and successful through that we learned about during the pandemic. So keeping our one-to-one program effective, making sure our teachers continue to use Canvas so students and parents have access to assignments and information all the time, and then building out any components that were kind of like we started to get into, but we thought this might be great for our staff and students, and we want to expand on those things. Like, for example, if we have students who are unable to be vaccinated and have to be quarantined, how do we make sure they stay connected to the classroom even if they're not physically present in school? So that's something we'll continue to work on.
Okay, then going back again to theme D, this year we'll be focusing on streamlining the process for communications, developing a guide for how and how often, what the expectations are for communication is in one guide for all to utilize. Another big one this year is, which will be, I would say brand new at the district level, is creating a comprehensive partnership plan, utilizing a tool that we are gathering from a new organization that we'll be partnering with, a national organization that will help us develop school, family, community partnerships, action teams for partnerships, if you will. We'll start that at the district level and then roll it into the schools as we progress through the year and then into the 22-23 school year. We talked about it at one of our prior meetings about developing a branding guide, taking a look at our school logos, and hitting equity hard as far as communicating what's happening with that, developing a comprehensive campaign for the work that's happening in that area, not just a one and done, but how we are progressing through the work that's being done with that focus area within the strategic plan. And lastly, is enhancing our social media and video presence, with hopefully being able to partner with our students at the high school level. So very beginning conversations starting with that, but we like to enhance those areas this year under community engagement.
So from the business office area, as you've heard all of the very exciting things that are going on and working with students, our responsibility is to see how our money can make money so that we can then support these initiatives that you've heard. For example, in partnering with our local financial institution at State Bank of the Lakes, we were able to make some investments with some dollars that would otherwise be receiving a lower interest rate. Also utilizing our Capital One P card, which those purchases are something that we will need to start the school year, but we're able to acquire then those rebates back to go back to support additional purchases. And finally, we want to make sure as we're looking at that long-term plan that we have investments that will be maturing at a time when we need those funds most, we will have access to them.
From the other areas in operations, we want to expand our participation in the career fairs and continue to network in the historically black colleges. We want to research the development of the Grow Your Own program, develop an employee appreciation system to build upon and sustain a culture that is inclusive and celebrates diversity, and develop project plans for each major facility improvement or construction initiative, as well as to complete the items identified as critical during the facility assessment process that happened a year ago.
The Information Technology Department is looking forward to the future, and I'm excited that this coming year represents a significant milestone in our One to Wonder program. What started out 5 years ago as a back of the napkin exercise to identify $100,000 to launch a teacher-initiated pilot, this fall we marked the culmination of all the planning and execution that took place over the past 4 years as the One to Wonder program shifts into maintenance mode. The 2,500 iPads identified in the first bullet point represent our ongoing annual commitment to roll out devices to 1st, 5th, and 9th graders, as well as staff as needed. Additionally, at the end of next school year, for the first time, 4th grade, 8th grade, and high school seniors will have the opportunity to buy out their district-issued iPad. The tech team will shift their strategic attention to a number of pilots we will be partnering with Teaching and Learning to launch, including a new student attendance system. The work ahead for us is exciting. As we finish one innovative initiative, we look forward to another. Thank you.
So in addition to what you just heard in the last 8 slides or so, we have to address what I call some boulders. They definitely need our attention. They are time bound, and frankly, most of them have dependencies on the other. We know that our kindergarten children are at Pleviac, and you may or may not be aware that we are in, I believe, the 7th year of a 10-year lease. And so we know we need to get those children back into our boundaries. Well, if we do, where are they going to go? What schools do they attend? What do the enrollments look like? What do the space configurations look like? How do we execute that? And then we also have interest in expanding our early childhood program. We've referenced that to you. We feel the best opportunity to intervene and support our children is when they're younger. I think it's just a better opportunity. We have a tremendous team working at the early childhood level. We definitely would like to see that program expanded because we think that will bear fruit at the high school eventually, right? So if we get more students in, we provide them with more support, they end up progressing through the system and then ultimately leave as 12th graders. We also have to address the Welcome Center. So what I did here, and my goal here wasn't to confuse anybody. The goal was to give you a visual of milestones and timelines of multiple buckets that will be going on at the exact same time. This Gantt chart is designed to show you potentially, now this is a draft, I want to call out the fact that you see board update in there at least 15 different times. Certainly, depending on the level of work or what we accomplish, those dates can change. And so the purpose behind that was to ensure that you understand that we will keep you informed, because these are things that are big. These are big things. When you start, just in my experience, when you start moving children and looking at space and needing space and renovating space and talking about the school day, those are things that we cannot do in a vacuum. And we need to be transparent, and we need to have a rationale, justification. We need to look at cost. We need to look at instructional benefits. So these are really big, complex things. So every diamond you see here is just it's a milestone, right? The bars that you see are timeline, but you can literally go through anywhere over the next 3 years and see that we have one of these 4 projects going at the same time. The one that you see the least on is the Welcome Center, because that's the one that's the biggest variable right now, and I'll talk about that in a second. So if you look at Pleviac, believe it or not, if we wanted to get out in 2 years, we would have to notify them in the next 10 days. We're obviously not ready to do that. I speak with the superintendent in Lake Villa about 2 to 3 times a year. We just spoke 2 weeks ago. The contract or the lease that we have is a 10-year lease. The language in the lease requires 2 years advance notice either way. But I do think it also allows us to be flexible with that. So if we felt like we needed to get out earlier, I think they would consider it. I am not sensing pressure from them to get out earlier. I do want to call out though that that property is on prime real estate, and I think at some point they're going to want to sell it. So, you know, with the enrollment study, now you can understand why we completed the enrollment study, because we've got that is going to contribute to kind of where this heads. The latest possible plebe exit is June 30th of 2024. So if we note, but in order for that to happen, we have to notify them June 30th of next year. So this is kind of a high level timeline of just possibilities, and just wanted to call it out and bring it to your attention. I think we've talked about these in isolation, some of these things, but we've never really seen them in one location. Again, I want to reiterate, in addition to all of the strategic planning initiatives that we're going to be moving, we're also going to have to work on this. Each one of these is going to have an action plan, a timeline, and we will vet that properly and involve the board. When we talk about bringing the PLEVX students back, there's a study and vetting phase. I don't want to get horribly specific, but it's okay. What does the enrollment projection look like? Where do the current PLEVX students, where do they reside and in what boundaries? Where would they go to school? And if they're assigned to those schools, will they even fit, right? Are we going to look at a K-5 configuration, or would we look at something different? How does the community feel about that? So there's a lot to this that we need. What are the instructional benefits? What are the costs? So those are like significant things that we will work on. We will do it properly, and we will give you the information you need as a board to make an informed decision. We also have to bring Earl into the mix. These are working condition issues, right? If we bring the kids back, we have boundary changes, we start talking about buildings, where do people go, what does the staffing look like? So, and they're a good partner, and they're going to help us with some ideas. So again, part of the process includes board updates, something like this. Potentially, especially if it's different, you would have public hearing potentially to give the community an opportunity to tell you how they're feeling. And then there's additional ways that we would work with Heather in terms of getting additional feedback, which we've listed here. So again, just provided a draft timeline for you. Early Education Center, again, we've talked about expanding it, but we've got to assess. So if you think about it, if we expand the EEC, where does the administrative team go? Would we look for another property? Would we use the church property? That's not even listed on here. The church property that you purchased at McGee, if we use the church property, what would we do? Would we knock the property down and rebuild it, or would we renovate? That has to be done before we know where we're headed on this. For your convenience, and I want to thank Janie Metzger. She did put the application deadline in here. So if we're going to expand it, now we can apply for the expansion and end up not doing it, right? So it's a commitment to do it. We fill out the application. At some point, if we say we don't want to do it, there's no penalty. So it's basically we plan on applying, which would be in the fall of next year. That's kind of the deadline. If you decide to do it, to comply with the grant, you'd have to implement by September 1st of 2023, okay? And then talked about the Welcome Center. We just need to figure out, because now, and thank you, Dr. Lamping, the Welcome Center is a 3-year lease. It's a 3-year lease. We're in year 2, and the way the language reads is we have to give either way 9-month notice unless both parties agree to do something else. But now we have to deal with the rerouting of Cedar Lake. That's Cedar Lake, yeah, right. So that project is going on. So with the Welcome Center, frankly, we could decide right now to get out of the lease, But in 9 months, I don't know where those services would go. We can disband, we can discontinue, but we don't have any space to do those in any of our school facilities. So this is a big deal. And so, again, I go back to the Gantt chart, so I provided it twice just to give you a visual, but you can see there's a lot of really big things that are going on at once. I am supremely confident in the talent of our team to do this properly. I'm not worried at all. We will be able to do this. We need the ability to adjust, be flexible if the opportunity presents itself. And certainly, I think, hopefully, you've seen we will keep you informed if we need to change. So, depending on your feedback tonight, the next step would be, and we've done this a little bit, well, actually in some more than others, but now we have to develop action plans for these. So I just wanted to get this on paper for you, for you to see that we have a lot to do. We have a lot to do the next 3 years. I'm a little bit, I don't know, excited is probably the wrong term, but I'm energized a little bit to get going on this stuff so that we can bring resolution to it. So though that's the formal, we've covered what did we do this year, how did we measure success, what do we plan next year, what are the other big things we need to work on. And certainly there might be other things that come up, but I think you kind of have an idea of where some of the things that definitely need our attention and where we as a leadership team feel like the focus should be to continue to improve opportunities for students. So I'm going to leave this podium, come back there. We're happy to answer any questions. The team is available. And again, I want to thank you for allowing us to take more than the standard 15 to 20 minutes. If you remember, we were going to schedule a special board meeting, but we couldn't coordinate schedules. So on behalf of the team, I want to thank you. So.
Thank you. I will actually open it up with just a couple clarifying questions on the Plebeiac and Welcome Center contracts. And whoever has the answer, please just chime in. I know that it was discussed that the lease requires the 2-year notice, but for the 10-year renewal where that ends in whatever, June 30th of 2024 for that latest exit, theoretically, we shouldn't have, do we have to notify 2 years ahead of that, or does that contract just end on June 30th, 2024?
So I don't think the language it doesn't roll over. There's not an automatic renewal. So, but I think that the 2-year notice before the 24 date, the reason I put that in there is potentially what if we wanted to extend it, right? So we would go to them and say, hey, we're still a little bit jammed up for space. Is this something you can do? And then we back to the drawing board. So yes, we could technically, if we don't notify them that within the 2-year window, it's not assumed we extend the deal. It just expires. So.
And then on the same question I'm going to ask on the Welcome Center for that 3-year contract, does it have an automatic rollover, or does it end at 3 years if we don't?
It does not have an automatic rollover.
Thank you. Any other questions? Because I know we got some.
Just wanted to clarify, Finance Committee has been clear that we don't want any contracts that roll over because we don't want to be put in those situations. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yay. All right, additional questions? Hold the button down, please.
So, my voice is low. So I have a question about
Scott, if you can hold the button now because we're recording.
About teaching and learning. Back it said one is I really thought that was great about the enhanced PD. Love that. Love. I did have a question about tracking student achievement. It talked about there is the wording is about getting the data. Sorry, should have taken handwriting in school. Can't read my own stuff. All right, it talks about use the data to evaluate for continuous improvement. Is that, that we'll start tracking that continuous improvement? Is that the intention, or I'm looking for where's the action in that? That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so what we're gonna be doing, so some of the, if you know the position, we asked for a data specialist and some data coaches and things like that. So what we're gonna be doing is identifying criteria for both programs and student achievement, and then working with Dan Kozik's team to create standardized reports that we can pull up and use regularly to evaluate how our students are doing and how our programs are doing. So the action comes in going through that process of evaluation and saying, okay, is this an effective means? Are we ineffective? Are we getting to the benchmarks that we set? Are we moving in the right direction? And then making choices about programming, allocation of resources based on that data. So some of the things that we want to look at aren't, to be clear, aren't just standardized scores. Like we typically only look at standardized test data, or mostly look at standardized test data, but that doesn't always tell the story. If you have a student who comes to 9th grade 6 grade levels behind, even if you grow them 5 grade levels, their standardized test data is off, right? So they've made tremendous progress, but it doesn't sort of tell the whole story, right? So we need to identify those benchmarks and what is the right way to measure in those areas. And we've not spent a ton of time doing that historically, so that's something we need to do.
And Mr. Jewett, I would just say the only reason you didn't see more this year is we just didn't assess in that manner. We didn't map test. So if you remember the prior strategic planning updates in the year, we had, again, maybe it's the wrong, gobs and gobs of trend data. So we intend, when you hear this next year, and frankly, we could even talk about maybe doing something on an intermittent level. I wanted to ask your question. Yes, we will be tracking improvement over time, because we have to, and you should expect us to be coming back with a variety of data. And it would be a combination of local assessment data, formative assessments, guided reading levels, but we also have access. I don't even know what's going to happen with the IAR. So we are planning on bringing student data back as part of our recap. We just, frankly, the 1920, the end of March, they did an IAR test, and then we had a limited scope this spring because we only had 30% of our kids in. One of the things that, and I think I referenced this with the positions, when we start the year, we are going to engage in a massive data process through formative assessment to identify where are our kids so that we can target the support at the beginning of the year. So
I'm wondering, similar to the Gantt chart, I was looking at that and just really appreciate that because I'm able to see where we are. Because I know all throughout the time that I've been on the board, some of those things on there have come up. I wonder when we're going to ... I'm going to ... And I wonder if there's a way similar to tracking student achievement, if there's more like a regular calendar of checking in about student achievement on more than just the once a year. Is that possible? Is that possible? The two, then is it possible also to keep or know when we're going to be checking in about some of these other items as well, some of these big bucket items?
So the answer is yes to both. We would just have to, as a team, we'd have to identify when would those sweet spots be, because we don't, if we establish an artificial date for example, giving the board an update on performance and we don't have the data, it's not going to be very good. So it's something that the team can talk about. Next year is going to be a little bit different because we're almost, we don't have a regular cycle because of how we're doing some things next year we haven't done before because of the pandemic, but certainly we can talk as a team and I can bring something back to the board. And then the second question was, so yes, actually, if you look at the Gantt chart for the operational things, I think each bucket has multiple board updates. I picked those based on when I thought we would have significant work done or we needed to get your input, but that is literally a draft. So if you look at the diamonds, wherever it says BOE update, that's where we would come back to you and say, hey, look, we're either in mid-process, here's what we've accomplished, here's what we need to do next, or I think some of the diamonds are literally the end of a timeline, which means we did the work and now we need to come to the board for either decision or feedback or something like that.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a spinny question to kind of counter Scott's question here. With all of the testing that's being proposed, I'm just throwing it a living. Are we gonna also kind of look at kids' mental health and testing burnout, given that even last year when kids were not in the building, I was hearing about weekly tests in every class and testing burnout was happening?
So Susan, Susan's the expert, but what I want to say is when we talk about formative assessment, that's, Susan, I'm going to let you jump in there, but we are not, it is the assessment that would be done in the normal course of assessing student progress. Susan, do you want to take that one?
Sure, as long as I understand. Are you referring to like classroom-based assessments as well as standardized tests, or just standardized assessments?
Well, that's why I wanted to find out is that, like, you know, when you guys were talking about, you know, testing, I think it's a great idea, finding out where everybody is when they start. I didn't know, you know, were we looking at how often were we looking at checking on, you know, how they've caught up and this and that. I mean, sometimes it's like, well, in 6 weeks, let's see how this intervention goes. And for some, it's like, oh my God, they're getting tested all the time, or what are they learning kind of thing. Or is it the, you know, quarterly, is this like kind of how the Illinois state testing would have been, like quarterly kind of thing?
Yeah, so this is a fun conversation that can actually take quite a long time. So I'll try to be brief, but there's of course all different kinds of assessments, right? And one of the things I think in general we have to make sure we understand is that a test is not always a test, right? So sometimes when we look at, for example, a standardized test has a certain format, has a certain function, has a certain time of the year that we give those, right? Then we have classroom-based assessments. You might, for example, a summative assessment, which is to see whether or not students have learned, typically at the end of a unit, right? Then you have, typically at the start of a unit, something we refer to as a diagnostic or other, right? And the purpose of that is to evaluate whether or not the students already know the information that's about to be covered, or if they are missing any like pre-existing prior knowledge that they might need, right? Because if they need to know how to add in order to do this next thing and they don't know how to add, the teacher shouldn't just move on to the next thing because the students won't be successful in it. And then the formative assessment that Don's referring to is like the best description I always think is like a checkup. You know, when you go to your doctor and they go, how are you feeling? Are things going okay? Do you have any new issues that you want to talk about? Are you eating well? You know, that kind of stuff, right? So it's not really a test, it's a checkup, because we have to start thinking differently about how we're doing business in the classroom. And so assessments, right, are about a conversation between the teacher and the student about where they are in the learning process. And if we spent more time talking like that, even with our kids, it lowers the stakes, right? So a standardized test is a high stakes assessment. It's always going to be, because it has a lot of implications for the school district and potentially for college entrance and things like that. Summative assessments, end of unit tests, are a little bit higher stakes as well, because they sort of are a defined endpoint, if you will, where you say, okay, have you learned this stuff? That's not to say that students in our district don't get additional chances to be successful learners. They do, but formative and diagnostic assessment should be extremely low stakes, in the sense that it's truly a conversation like, hey, do you know this stuff yet? Or where are you in your learning? Because how can the teacher respond appropriately to where the student is if they don't know? So it's not really about frequency as much as it is about like how we talk about assessment and how we provide feedback to students about where they are. I mean, if I'm always going, it's a test, that sound right in the kid's head is is like a screech of like, oh my God, I have to be perfect, right? But they're not all equal, I guess, is the point.
No, I understand that. What I'm asking is, how are you training the teachers, and then how are they working with the children? Because based on what I saw last year, having worked from home and having two kids in two different tracks in the high school, the word test happens weekly in every class. And having a child with an anxiety disorder, what your theory is wonderful and I love it. That is not what's happening in the high school.
So we are working on that. That's one of our big, so we don't often talk about kind of like the work we do. Liz talks about the work we do with teachers. We don't always talk about the work we do with our administrators, right? So one of the things that we're doing this year is a weekly learning sessions, if you will, with our building administrators to make sure that they are fully aware of and understand all the processes that should be going on in their buildings, so that when they're having conversations with teachers, the language is the right language, that they're guiding their staff in the best way possible. And so we will be doing that. We recognize that that's a thing, and we have a lot of young staff. Some of our veteran teachers are retiring, and people who are more familiar with the process. So it is going to be, beholden on our building administrators to sort of step up a little bit, I think. And they're aware of that. So we're working with them to help them out. And we'll be going through that process. In fact, it starts Wednesday this week.
I think just to go back to Scott's question, and Peg, I know what you're asking. We are not interested in assessing kids to death. We want to spend more time teaching and supporting, but I do think there's an opportunity for us to provide an intermittent, whatever that looks like, a progress report on data without waiting to the end of the year. That's what I thought I heard you say, right,
Yes,
Scott?
I wasn't saying that assessment equals test.
Yeah. Correct. That's exactly my point, because frankly, in my humble opinion, I think a running record can maybe tell us more about what's going on with a student than an IAR standardized test ever could. So there's opportunities for us to share information that's not standardized test data, just to take a temperature and to kind of share with the board how things are going. So we can talk about that as a team and get back to you, for sure.
Okay, a couple questions. First, Liz, a great presentation on the PD, the professional development. She always gets me excited about the professional development. I do have a question about theme C, the social emotional development. There's bullet point. This is expand student voice through Panorama's SEL check-ins and surveys, and then continue providing SEL supports for parents. My question is, how are we going to encourage those check-ins? As you mentioned, everybody's coming back to school. It's a whole new learning process. It's like we're all starting school over again. How are we going to encourage that when there's going to be an overwhelmed feeling for every student coming in? So how are we going to encourage it and help really support our parents with those surveys and check-ins?
So the surveys and check-ins are for the students. So they're very similar to the ones that the students did this year on Mondays and Thursdays through a Google form. But because of the pandemic, Panorama went and added that as a student check-in option that we have added to our service contract for this next year, so that instead of having to have the students log in and hope that Google works and maybe all of that, for Panorama, they log in on the exact same link with their ID number, no matter if they're doing the SEL survey, if they're doing the student check-in, if they're doing the equity survey. So it's very kid-friendly for that, but it's also very easy for the teachers to be able to push it out as well.
And I think, I'm sorry if I can interject, what's important about that then is it provides Jen and her team and Lisa, Stefan, information, right, about where our students are and where we need to target specific things. So we might be heading this direction and we say, no, our kids are okay over here. We need to shift and go over here. So that's not always information we've had. And Jen's work in bringing Panorama to the district and adding these features helps us to track better how our students are doing with SEL.
Okay, I think that definitely helps. But getting to the, you know, the parent component, because again, same thing as a parent, you know, we're sending our kids back to school this fall and everybody got used to being home in a different lifestyle almost of education. Parents are going to be overwhelmed just as much. How are we helping the parents with the social, emotional component? Because it'll be important for every parent.
Agreed. So one of the things that we heard from the parent focus groups in October was that they wanted more strategies to work at home for SEL and to help support their students. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue doing our monthly parent SEL in the home resources for them. We'll continue the SEL newsletters, but this year, again, feedback that we were getting is that they were very elementary. So this next year, we will have a newsletter that goes out for elementary parents, for middle school parents, and for high school parents. And then we'll still continue with the family togetherness calendars, but again, making sure that we make them all age appropriate. I'm trying to think.
It'll definitely be more targeted for our elementary, middle school, high schools, because that's
yes.
Right,
so one of
is
the
different for each.
So level. One of the things is this past 2 years is the SEL team was myself and Crystal Oswald, and there's an entire district. So thankful to you guys to approve the 2 more C&I positions so that we can actually have someone who is focusing just at the middle school level and have another person who's focusing just at the high school level so that we actually can provide all of the resources to our teachers, our students, but also our parents.
Great.
And Susan, can you just briefly talk about your vision for the wellness and health stipend position? The board that's on the agenda tonight, it's a stipend, or maybe it's Jen, whoever, but just briefly talk about the vision because that ties into this too.
Yeah, so I'll jump in, then Jen, you can obviously say whichever you would like. Our goal, right, is to look at, we talk about the whole child, right, but we need to look at staff members in the same way and recognizing that whether, as you mentioned, whether it's our parents or whether our staff members, whatever, everyone got used to a very different way of life and figuring out how to navigate that. And so coming back, we have challenges to face, just acclimating to being at work every day, having, 200 kids around you versus 500 kids, like there's a lot of different things that we have to work on. So the wellness stipend really is to have a person in the building who's focusing on providing opportunities for our staff to self-care, like how can they take care of themselves, what are the various things that they can do to help with, as Jen pointed, not mental health, but clearing their brain for the day, or how do I make adjustments back into this new back into my old new world. And then of course this just togetherness options, right? Like even though you might have been talking, you haven't been around your financial amounts of time. And so how do you sort of reintroduce yourself and how do you make those connections? Because things like our PLCs require staff, communication and connection to be effective when they're looking at data, and they have to be vulnerable about how their kids are performing if it's not as well as they would like. So how do you rebuild those things that might have sort of separated, right, over time? So we want to look at bringing them back together and providing ways for them to take care of themselves and really each other too. Is that okay, Jen?
Along those same lines as you mentioned, the reacclimation and all this information we want to push to our parents and students. And I haven't looked too deeply, but are we going to have some of those resources and information on our website?
Yes, so all of our presentations for this next year, we'll make sure that we have both the Spanish and the English versions uploaded onto the website. I figured out the 4th one. So every Wednesday I do on social media for Facebook, I see
it.
Thank you. I do the Wednesday Wellness. All of those videos are uploaded onto the district webpage every week. So we're going to have that there, but I do want us to make sure that we put all of our newsletters up there for all of the different levels. Just again, trying to be as transparent as possible, but also trying to get them as many resources as possible.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping to hear, because it's not out there, and we need to again have that out there for the parents for a resource and to go back and look at that. I'm good with the social and emotion. I do have another question. Community school partnerships. The relations manual, communication expectations, branding guide, logos. Communication expectations. I just wanted to clarify. Again, we're talking about communication, so it's consistent across all the districts, like all elementaries. Both middle schools are, again, their communication to our students and family is consistent and the same. So it doesn't matter if I go to Murphy or I go to Ellis. We're pushing that same information.
Yes, in large part. There, you might see some unique pieces between schools, but yes. So we've talked a lot about um, when is it best to communicate. So we have like district level communications, what types of information should be going out through the buildings, how, when. So all of that will be built into that manual. We have questions about, it could be year-end things. When do we start talking about that, and how is it pushed out, and how frequently? So all of that will be built in.
Specifically, because again, as we come to this new school year, we want all our elementaries, all our middle to be pushing that same information again as we all come back from a year of hybrid learning and you know, in our learning in our homes, and we're going to get that same message across.
Right, and there's even another layer to that, and the teaching and learning department has started working on that with the implementation of the 550 new licenses. There's more. So the electronic newsletter that's incorporated through a Blackboard tool. So we've talked about building out templates for not only school newsletters, but also grade levels, specifically at the elementary levels probably to start. So them creating these templates of information, and then teachers and principals maybe having the opportunity to alter them in certain ways to make them specific for their building, but that general list of content is within all of those newsletters across the district.
Okay, thank you. And then again, just thank you, Dr. Mendoza, for the milestones. I know we do have some big, as you say, boulders to move in the next couple years, so got some work ahead of us. Thank you.
Additional questions? Hearing none, I will definitely say again, as everyone has already stated, thank you for the great transparency, amazing communication. So definitely thank you, and we look forward to continuing to work. We will now move on to our second communication to the board, disposal of materials. Dr. Rowling.
So this is just a memo identifying some items that are being disposed of from some of our buildings as we go through and clean out storage lockers and classrooms. We're finding old and obsolete materials.
Questions at all from the board? Thank you. Next up is donation of used school supplies and books. Ms. Bennett.
So as the memo states that there were some materials at Beach Elementary that were identified this year as we've gone through our schools trying to make extra space. And through a partnership, one of the nurses at Beach at the time had an opportunity to donate some used supplies and books to a community in southern Belize. So just informing the board of that donation.
Thank you. Any additional questions? All right, and following on a theme, recycling of obsolete technology.
This latest communication is from Mr. Elbers, and it contains a list of obsolete technology that we will be disposing of.
Questions from the board? All right, next up, annual liability and, yes.
The overhead projector, are you sure you don't want to use the overhead projector?
It took us a while to reach the conclusion, but we are comfortable recycling it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. All right, next up, annual liability insurance renewals.
Good evening. This information is for communication only. As you know, we are a member of CLIC, which is a cooperative with area school districts within the state of Illinois. One of the many benefits of being a cooperative is that you have the benefit of purchasing power with many districts involved, so you're getting the best rate possible. One of the goals is to certainly maximize the dollars that are being used, but being in larger claims. And so we have to celebrate when we have the opportunity to have that purchasing power, but we also need to honor when those claims come in, which could reflect then an increased premium. And that's what you're seeing a little bit here. In Round Lake, we did have some unavoidable purchases and some claims against our insurance. And in addition, as we look at that, we look at the whole picture, and you'll also notice that we did have reduction in the area of workman's comp, which really celebrates the work we're doing with our staff and keeping them safe and keeping our facilities safe as well.
Thank you for that clarification on the liability insurance increases. Any additional questions from the rest of the board? All right, thank you. I think next up would be contracts under 1,000, but I don't believe there were any, correct? All right, and next up is the FOIA report. I'm sure everyone had a chance to read through that. Any questions in regards to the FOIA? Seeing no questions there, we will move on then to public comment. Of course, Mrs. Bennett's not here. I will read slowly then. Members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings by attending in person or by submitting an electronic public commitment form. Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes. A link to the electronic public comment form may be accessed via the online board meeting packet located on the district's website. And also public comments will be accepted up until the time the board reaches the public comment section of the meeting agenda. I will start out actually first with, is there any public comment in-house in the room? Seeing none, I would then ask if we have any electronic public comment. Not having Ms. Bennett here would make that be an interesting question. So let's do this. Let's bounce to the superintendent's report, and then when she's back, we'll ask for clarification.
Thank you, Cisco and the rest of the board. The only update we have for you is to notify you that last week, Juneteenth was approved as an official state and federal holiday. Juneteenth commemorates when slavery was finally abolished in the United States on June 19th, 1865. Modifications will be made to the previously approved 2021-2022 school calendar and staff work calendars once specific details and instructions are received from the Illinois State Board of Education. And that concludes the superintendent's report for Monday, June 21st.
Thank you, Dr. Mendoza. Any questions in regards to the superintendent's report? Seeing no questions there, we will bounce back and just see if we had any online public comment. Seeing no online public comment, we will now continue to committee reports. First up in that line is the Finance Committee update.
Good evening. Yes, we had the Finance Committee meeting earlier this evening, and you will see that the finance agenda is mirroring a lot of tonight's agenda due to our summer schedule of one meeting a month. So I'll go down our list of agenda, and I'll just let you know that most of these, again, are going to be on our action items later this evening, which is Mastery Connect license for the pilot program, which will be later on in the agenda. Conscious Campus Speaker Contract. This will come back in July. This is a public motivational speaker for the high school for this fall. It is set up for both in-person and, let's hope not, virtual if necessary. That is funded by our student council. Again, later on the agenda, we have the Senior Athletic Banquet, Larkspur and Leo Florist, Senior Athletic Banquet, Balloons by Tommy. Also later on the agenda is the Graduation Ceremony Welsh Video Productions Contract. Coming back in our July meeting is the Lakeside Transportation Contract. There is 3.5% increase in that contract from last year due to, of course, insurance rates going up. Coming back in July as well is the Ohio Pile contract renewal. This is the spiritware sold at CVS the last couple years. Coming up, it will be expanded to not only include CVS, it'll include Walgreens at the corner of Cedar Lake and Rollins, Walgreens in Haynesville, and then the Jewel Osco in Round Lake. So there'll be an expansion of that. Last year, or 2020, we made a profit of $350 this last year. Obviously not so well with $134.83, but obviously the pandemic was a big factor in that. But the Finance Committee supports and wants to continue to move forward with that. There is no cost to the district. We get a 15% back on those sales. So hopefully with the fall returning to normal and football games, all that spiritware, we should see an increase. Municipal Research Services. This is the company we use for the CAFR, the financial reporting. In the financial reporting, there is a demographic of the community we serve. This company provides those services. So we obviously want to move forward with that as well. NCPA cooperative membership, that is on our agenda later. The interlocal purchasing systems membership, or TIPS, is again on the agenda for later. Annual liability insurance renewals, is that on our agenda for later? I don't think I have it marked right. Yes, we reviewed. And then E-rate consultant renewal, that is coming back in July. Of course, that is the E-rate that we are funded by. Dan will be back a contract. There is a little bit of an increase in that new contract, but that's because the district is up for a complete refresh as we move forward. I did ask for some additional information to be added to the memo, so you'll see that information we requested for the board's information in July, in the July packet. Also coming in July is student and staff ID printing agreement. This is a great project. We're bringing in we're going to have a new student and staff IDs, so we won't be having student and staff IDs through LifeTouch. As I say, LifeSource, but LifeTouch. So these will be IDs that each school, each building will get the equipment and the software so they can take student pictures and print IDs in their buildings. HR will take ownership of the staff IDs as well. So again, those will all be in-house. They'll have a lanyard, and then Heather will work on the logo or branding of what those IDs will look like. But again, we'll have ownership of our IDs. The only district closest to us that uses this system is Barrington, but it is a great idea, and it'd be great that we own and can support our IDs. Later on the agenda as well is a diligent board docs contract, and then of course you'll see the treasurer's report contract, P card, and of course you can always visit the Finance Committee agenda for further details. But again, a lot of this is on today due to our scheduling for summer, where everything is one meeting for the month. Anything to add, Mr. DeVera?
No.
That's it for finance.
Thank you. Any questions for finance? If not, we will move on to community engagement.
Okay, so we did have our community engagement meeting this evening, and basically it was the same thing that we've been discussing in this meeting. 2021 highlights, 21-22 strategic initiatives, upcoming large-scale initiatives, and then our meeting structure and schedule. So I will not reiterate a lot of that because Ms. Bennett did a wonderful job and she's great. We were Theme D, Parent, Community, and School Partnerships. So she's essentially reviewed all of it already with you. If you do have any questions, I would direct you to look at the packet, but I feel like we went over it pretty solidly. Thing to add? Scott, Heather, no? Okay. And that's basically what happened with us.
Thank you. Any questions for community engagement? All right. Now we are into the approval and action phase.
I need a motion to approve the May 17th, 2021 regular board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Ms. Larson. Any question? Oh, no.
Second.
Oh, very well. Kill me, Scott. All right, seconded by Mr. Jewett then. Any questions other than the fact that I don't know people's voices? Roll call, please.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson.
Yes, but I don't know if I should be offended or not. Sure.
Fair enough. All right, we have an
Mr.
approved,
DeBera.
we have approved meeting. Oh,
Yes, thanks.
My bad. I'm off the rails already tonight, guys. Sorry about that. All right, we have
Motion passes.
it's approved. So moved. All right, you're up next.
I need a motion to approve the June 14th, 2021 special board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Abstain.
Mrs. Klingler, Mrs. Larson, Mr. DeVere, Mr. DeVere.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing.
And now they're back. Yeah.
All right. We have it moved.
Motion passes.
Try to get closer to see.
Testing. Testing. All right, we're on to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the accounts payable report for $2,589,987.69. Previous motions for $206,447.84. The treasurer's report for May 2021, and the employment report as listed.
So moved. Second. Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Ms. Larson. Roll call.
Yes.
Mr. DeVere,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. And the motion passes. All right, next up is introduction of administration. This ought to be fun. All right, good luck on the microphones and look forward to some introduction of administration.
Fingers crossed. All right. Hello again, everyone. I am here to introduce our new instructional technology coordinator. This is Donnie Castens. Donnie grew up in Schaumburg, Illinois, and attended Schaumburg High School, where his passion for education was sparked. He has been a professional educator since 2009 after he graduated from Illinois State University with an undergraduate degree in chemistry education. Throughout his teaching career, he has taught at Hoffman Estates High School, Lake Zurich High School, and Round Lake High School while teaching co-taught, general, and honors levels of earth science, physical science, chemistry, and astronomy. In addition to teaching, he was an active participant in the school communities of these districts through coaching lacrosse, scholastic bowl, and sponsoring several clubs, of which his favorite was indoor rock climbing. In May of 2017, Donnie earned his master's degree in principal prep school leadership from Concordia University. He then became the science department chair at Round Lake High School in the fall of 2018. During his time as department chair, he has helped revamp and vertically align the district's science curriculum while collaborating with faculty and staff to integrate technological tools and classrooms to enhance lessons and student experiences. On a personal note, Donnie loves all things weird and nerdy, including movies, comic books, and video games. He and his fiancée, Kelly, just purchased their first home in Volo, which they share with their 2 dogs and 2 cats. When Donnie isn't working, he is busy wedding planning, camping, joyriding his motorcycle, and improving his art skills. He hopes to do a lot more traveling in the near future, which includes St. Lucia and his first time to Europe. Please welcome Donnie Castens.
It's working? Awesome. I just want to say thank you so much. I'm really excited to get things started in perpetuating what's already in place, but also to collaborate and improve and innovate with everyone here and in the buildings to make things good for all stakeholders in Round Lake. Thanks.
I just have to say, I thought it was pretty impressive that you presented before you even introduced to the board. No, I'm serious. That's really just great job. And I just want you to know I love your name, your first name. It's awesome.
Good evening. My name is James Tomei, principal at Murphy Elementary School. I'd like to thank the Board of Education and Dr. Mendoza for giving me the opportunity to introduce the new assistant principal, Jennifer Malecki. Unfortunately, as Jennifer was driving here, she got into an accident. She's okay, but unfortunately she couldn't be with us today. But just to tell you a little bit about Jennifer, she comes to us from Woodstock School District 200, where she has served for the past 14 years. She's worked in the capacity of a self-contained special education teacher for students with autism and severe speech language needs, a first and second grade monolingual teacher, a first and fourth grade dual language teacher, and most recently, an elementary instructional coach. Also professionally, she's an adjunct professor at Aurora University. Jennifer received her bachelor's degree from Roosevelt University, where she majored in elementary ed with an endorsement in special education. She also earned a master's degree from Concordia University and has an endorsement in English as a second language. On a personal level, Jennifer is an avid reader and loves to scrapbook and make cards. So thank you for your approval of Jennifer. She's going to be a great asset to our school and community.
So I do want the board to know, and this doesn't happen that often, I got a personal call from the superintendent in Woodstock, Dr. Mike Moan, who I'm connected with through LUDA, basically complimenting us on hiring Jennifer. They're a large unit district, and I don't get those calls that often. So I think both Donnie Castens, who you met earlier, who we know is going to do a great job because he's been here and is proven. I think we got 2 really, really good people for the team. So kudos to the hiring teams.
Good evening, members of the board. It is a great pleasure to introduce the 2 new administrators. Not new, they're actually part of the team here. They've been on the bus, they're just getting a new seat on the bus. Throughout the interview process, one of the things that was a prime consideration for everybody who picked the 2 candidates was that we had a level of consistency. One of the things that we've talked about tonight is that we have a lot of work coming in when the kids come back after being gone for a long time. And so we're very fortunate to have 2 people who are part of the team already. We're just moving them into a different spot on the field. So our first introduction is Carla Richards. A fun fact, Carla and I we graduated from the same year at Wheeling High School. So some years later, we've kind of connect again here in Round Lake School District 116. We are very pleased to have Carla Richards as the next Assistant Principal of Education Services at Round Lake High School. Carla graduated in May 2008 from National Louis University with a master's degree in special ed. Carla started teaching at McGee right here in August of 2008 when it reopened. We were very fortunate to have Carla move to the high school in 2018 as a DC for Special Education Department. Shortly thereafter, Carla completed her educational leadership degree in April of 2019 from National Louis University. Carla lives in Palatine with her husband Bill and 11-year-old son Charlie. Carla stays active by serving as a coach for Charlie's basketball and volleyball teams and participating in Boy Scout activities. Family activities include swimming, bike riding, and fishing together. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Carla Richards.
Thank you, Mike. I wanted to thank everybody in the Round Lake community for this opportunity. As a principal, Mike has cultivated an environment for folks to strive to be their personal best. His genuineness and ability to inspire others with his emails and life stories has always united us as a staff, especially during these difficult times. He is a great role model, and I know I will have his ongoing support to help me through and succeed in my new role. Lisa Murray has also been a great mentor, inspirer, and motivator to me. She has been with me every step of the way. She coached me to reach my potential. I know together, with our shared visions, we will continue to move our department forward, and she has truly been my biggest supporter, to which I am forever grateful. Thank you.
If I knew she was going to say such great things about me, I'd introduce her all the time. So next up is Mitch Berenson. Mitch Berenson is a familiar face to us here in Round Lake. Mitch is entering his 25th year in education, the last 16 years as an administrator. He received his bachelor's degree in secondary ed from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. After teaching a bit, Mitch decided to pursue a master's degree in school administration at Northern Illinois University and became the Director of Guidance and Coordinator of Building Assessment at Elgin High School. In pursuit of professional growth, Mitch then became the Lake Zurich High School Assistant Principal for Student Services and later the Director of Pupil Personnel Services at Lake Park High School. While at Lake Park High School, he earned an educational specialist degree in school leadership and a doctorate in curriculum and instruction from Northern Illinois University. During the 2019-2020 school year, Mitch was a principal at Urbana High School before he became part of the Round Lake team as the assistant principal across the town at Round Lake Middle School last year. In his free time, Mitch is an avid sports fan with the Chicago Bears, maybe Arlington Bears, I should say, maybe, and the University of Illinois basketball teams being the teams he roots for most. He's also a softball dad, as he is actively involved as a coach for his 14-year-old softball team. He loves to spend time traveling with his wife and two daughters. It's my pleasure to introduce Mitch Berenson as the next AP of Operations and Safety for Round Lake High School.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to continuing my career here at Round Lake High School and joining the high school team. Looking forward to a great year and a great opening. So thank you very much.
Carla and Mitch, congratulations on your appointments. I'm really pleased to see our own people moving through the system, which not only speaks to your growth and development, but also the people around you who are supporting you. So congratulations. I look forward to seeing you in those roles.
All right, next up, We are back to old business, so take it away.
All right. Old business, I need a motion to improve the increase in personal inventory as listed in the June 21st, 2021 memorandum from Dr. Mendoza to be funded through a combination of Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Release Act, ESSER, and the district funds.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Ms. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeBera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the second meal and extra piece of fruit cost.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Francisco. Any questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeBera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. And motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the 4-year contract with Lauterbach and Amen and direct the superintendent and or his designee to execute all documents related to said agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeBera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. And motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the interfund transfers as discussed in the hearing held today, June 21st at McGee Middle School at 6:55.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Ms. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. DeBera,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson.
Yes.
And motion passes.
All right, new business. I need a motion to approve the Diligent Board Docs Pro contract for July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Wait, I have a question, just to reconfirm. We were gonna check to see if they have a app as board books did.
I will check on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeBera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the purchasing the Mastery Connect licenses for the pilot program.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. DeBera,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. And motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance Intergovernmental Agreement and Membership.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeBera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. And motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Interlocal Purchasing System Intergovernmental Membership.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Larson, seconded by Ms. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the ITU AbsorbTech service agreement.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. And motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Welsh Video Productions contract.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Francisco. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve balloons by Tommy contract in the amount of $3,056.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee, yes, Mr. Francisco.
Yes, and the motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the SEM Brazilian contract.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, second, I believe, by Ms. Lee. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Mad Bomber Fireworks contract.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ms. Larson, seconded by Mr. Francisco. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Larkspur and Leo Floors contract in the amount of $2,500.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Fun Ones equipment rental contract.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley.
Yes. Need a
Motion. Yeah, motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Larkspur and Leo Floors contract in the amount of $1,031.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Balloons by Tommy contract in the amount of $2,520.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco.
Yes. And motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the Music Theater International contract for the 2022 RLHS Spring Musical.
So moved.
Second.
Believe that was a motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Mrs. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the contract renewal for the Raptor Visitor and Emergency Management System for the remainder of the 2020-2021 and school year and the entire 2021-2022 school year.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Larson. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera.
Yes.
And motion passes. Think that brings us to the end of action items. Looking to that just to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up is positive occurrences. I will start with the positive occurrences. Just a great job with the athletics award banquet ceremony that was done at the stadium. It was great to be able to use the stadium, bring everybody together, especially for the senior athletes. In addition, I know the soccer team was able to have the boys and girls on a separate day come out to the stadium and do their end of season awards as well. So again, just great seeing the facilities starting to get used and everybody kind of getting back out and starting to get back to a normalcy.
And I don't know if we had a meeting since then, but the graduation was beautiful. It was really executed just wonderfully. It was hot, but everybody was in great spirits. It was wonderful.
Yeah, we just, again, the athletic ceremony and the graduation was beautiful. I don't know if anyone else on the board knows, ISB used one of our graduation pictures for their newsletter. So I have it so I can share it with you all because it's one of the pictures that I took. So.
Yeah, photography. Woo.
I said that letter went out to, the state and it's our graduate on the cover.
Anything else? All right, next up, future agenda items. If you've got future agenda items, let's put them out. Hearing none, let me get to the closed session. And I will we'll need a motion to adjourn to closed meeting on June 21st, 2021 for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including here testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity, Section 5 ILCS 120/2C1. Also, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, 120/2C5, and discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, whether for the purpose of approval of the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.06, 120/2C21.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ms. Lee, second by Mrs. Larson. Any questions then? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee. Yes.
All right, we have an approved motion, so we will adjourn into closed session. I believe we do have open afterwards. So if anyone wants to wait to see the open afterwards, please hang out outside. If not, we look forward to seeing you in open. I believe we have a few more action items.
Yes, I need a motion to approve the purchase price for real estate located at 719 Valentine Street, Round Lake, Illinois, for the new purchase price of $612,253.
So moved. Second.
Who was, got it.
Yeah, that's why I said the new purchase price. The resolution was 600,000. The new purchase price, as discussed, is $612,253.
So moved.
All right, motion by Ms. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Any questions? Roll call, please. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the May 3rd, 2021 regular board meeting minutes.
So
Second.
Motion by Mr. DeVera and seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Questions? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes of May 17th, 2021 from the regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 And motion passes. I believe that brings us to the end and to the adjournment of our meeting, so I will call us closed. And thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and have a great evening. We will see you next month.